This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry with agriculture broadcasters Orion Samuelson and Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH and your local Case IH dealer.
Biofuel stories have been in the headlines recently, both at the federal and at the state levels. Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson here in the studio this week, but later on in the program, we'll be joined by both Max Armstrong and Orion Samuelson, so stay with us. Over the past few weeks, there have been a lot of discussions about biofuels. We saw President Biden open up E15 sales year-round, and we've also seen several states make actions to improve biofuel access. One such state is Iowa, which recently passed its Biofuels Access Bill. Joining us this week to discuss it is Monty Shaw, the Executive Director of the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association. And Monty, what does the Iowa Biofuels Access Bill do?
Well, yeah, we're very excited to have this innovative policy put forward by Iowa Governor Reynolds. In a nutshell, what it says is for Iowa retailers, if you have compatible equipment by 2026, you're going to offer E15 for sale to your consumers. Right now, we only have about 250 or more stations out of 2,000, over 2,000 stations that actually offer this lower cost fuel. So we're going to make sure that it's available. No one has to buy it. You're still going to have fuel choice, but we're going to have access to at least have that option at the pump.
Monty, what does this bill's passage mean for consumers and for farmers in the state of Iowa?
First of all, for consumers, which is really what this bill is about, is it's going to be lower cost fuels. We're seeing E15 sell for 10, 20, 30 cents a gallon less than E10. And so you're going to be able to have that access and be able to offer, have that choice to get a little bit more octane for a little bit less money. Pretty straightforward. For farmers, it's going to open up a market that, we really think this will make E15 the new normal over time, because where it's offered today, people buy it. I mean, it's cheaper, right? It's not hard to do. So if it becomes the new normal, I think that we'll be able to have maybe 60 million gallons more demand here in Iowa. But even more importantly, we've already talked to other states that think this might be an innovative way for them to go forward too. So we export a lot of ethanol. We want to export our ethanol policy.
That is interesting, Monty. A lot of times we think of biofuels policy as being federal. What else can states be doing to maximize biofuel usage within their borders?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of regulations and things that the oil companies have put up over the years, from equipment regulations to different things. So in Iowa, we've really tried to partner with retailers. We've created an infrastructure program that provides grants to do upgrades. We're now, there's some incentives if they sell the fuel, but also just saying, hey, this is something that's good for Iowa. It's good for our consumers. If you have it, if you have the equipment, you need to sell it. Now, if you're an old station, you have an old tank, something that's not compatible, you're going to be able to get a waiver. But the other thing you mentioned at the top of the show, that President Biden recently was in Iowa and kind of opened up E15 for the summer in 2022, and that was great news. That was incredibly helpful news, but it was an emergency action just for 2022. We're still going to have that same problem in the summer of 2023 and beyond, and I think here in the next few days, we're going to see several governors step up and take permanent action that will restore year-round E15 in their states. So we're going to get it in front of consumers. We're going to make sure retailers can sell it year-round, and that's going to be good for both the consumer and the farmer.
For a bill like this within the state of Iowa, Monty, what do you expect to see in terms of implementation time? How long is it going to take to roll out the provisions that were just signed into law?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, passing the bill was difficult, lots of details, lots of different interested parties, but now it has to be implemented. So we'll be working with the Department of Agriculture, who will be the primary agency in Iowa that deals with this. They're going to have to write rules. Some of the provisions go into effect in 2023. If you build a new station, you're going to come under the bill right away. For everybody else that's already selling fuel today, it won't happen until 2026. But there are those waiver provisions. If you have these old tanks, or if it's going to cost too much to upgrade your station, you get a waiver. So we're going to want to make sure that we, on one hand, give anyone who truly deserves a waiver one. We don't want some gas station in a small town going out of business. That doesn't help us or anybody. But we also need to make sure those waivers are only for people who actually need them and not just something that can be gotten too easily. So we'll be working with that, but I think you're going to start seeing a difference literally in 2023 with the big benefits coming by 2026.
Lots of enthusiasm there for biofuels. That's Monty Shaw, Iowa Renewable Fuel Association. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. And it's time to talk markets. Joining me this week is Brian Basting, economist with Advanced Trading. Brian, thanks for joining us this week.
It's always a pleasure to be here with you, Mike.
You know, there's a lot of enthusiasm right now about biofuels. We saw an increase in sales allowed over the summer of E15. Brian, what are you hearing about margins on the production side? Are ethanol producers going to run hard this summer?
There's been quite a bit of variability in those ethanol margins the last 6 months, Mike. We've had a period of extreme profitability, backed off a little bit earlier this year. Now it's coming back a little bit, and we are seeing those numbers ramp up a bit. You mentioned E15 for this summer. That's going to be working in the favor in terms of increased ethanol production in terms of the demand side for corn.
It will. So, Brian, does that mean that you expect to see ethanol plants continue to push that basis in the countryside?
It certainly has been a factor, Mike, in these historically strong basis levels. They backed off here a little bit here the last few weeks in corn. However, they were historically strong this winter, and it has really been a driver in these markets. Cash prices at this time of year for corn have never been higher than they are right now.
It is something to see. And Brian, this is coming with still strong demand from a lot of our partners. You mentioned ethanol has been running hard. Export demand has been very strong. Brian, give us an update. What are you seeing on exports?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Mike. As we speak here, we just had another sale made this week to China. Over 2 million tons of corn, combination of old and new crop, was sold of U.S. corn to China this week. China has been back in the market, Mike, with the war, of course, in Ukraine. Ukraine is a big supplier of corn to China. China has been forced to look to other sources. The biggest origin right now is the U.S., and that has worked to the U.S. producers' advantage.
It has. And Brian, do you expect to see China continue to buy as you look at the needs they need to accumulate here in the short term? Is it going to have to come from the U.S.?
It's a great question, Mike. In terms of suppliers at this point, Brazil would be another potential supplier. However, the Brazil crop, the Safrinha crop, looks good at the moment, but it won't be available to the market probably until July at the earliest, and as you get into August and September. So this is the window of opportunity that the U.S. has until that harvest is complete, that we would be the primary supplier absent Ukraine in the market.
Brian, you mentioned that Brazilian corn crop. Do you have any concerns about how much corn could come out of Brazil? Is weather starting to be a factor?
It was a near ideal growing season, Mike, most of the growing season this year. The soybean crop came off earlier, about as line was expected in the north. Crop got planted, corn crop got planted on time. There's been some issues develop here, though, the last few weeks with dryness in Mato Grosso up north. We've also had more of an issue with a windstorm that developed, similar to the derecho that we had here in the U.S. 2 years ago. Your viewers would, of course, remember that. And the other thing that may be an issue is there's some forecast for an early frost in the south. All those things set aside for the moment, though, Mike, a much bigger crop than last year at the moment.
These delays that we're seeing develop here in the northern United States, obviously with the wet and the cold. Brian, is the market watching that on the corn side for potential moves higher?
It's something that the market is aware of, Mike. I don't think it's a driver as such as what hot and dry weather, for example, would be during pollination in July. But anytime you bunt that planting date back a bit, if you will, the guys are definitely ready to go. Folks are ready to go in the country and looking for that window. Hopefully we'll get a nice weather window soon, but the market is keeping an eye on them.
That certainly makes sense. Brian, the wheat market, as you mentioned, dryness. Wheat has been in a terrible drought category. Before we take a break here, Brian, where do you see wheat markets headed in the short term?
Exceptional drought, Mike, as we speak in Kansas, particularly the Texas Panhandle, western Oklahoma. The wheat market has been to be underpinned by that uncertainty about the crop here in the northern hemisphere. However, I would say this, the export market for the U.S. wheat is in direct contrast to the U.S. corn. We are the residual supplier of wheat to the world right now because of record crops in Australia and Argentina that were harvested at the tail end of 2021. They are supplying the world at the moment.
All right. We'll be back for more conversations with Brian Basting from Advanced Trading. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. And we're back talking markets with Brian Basting, economist at Advanced Trading. Brian, we were speaking about the wheat market, and wheat exports from the United States have been dismal for a little while. Do you anticipate them picking up as this year moves on?
They have been dismal, Mike, directly related to record crops this year harvested in Australia and Argentina. Those crops have directly displaced any U.S. origin here for the last 3 or 4 months. I'd expect that to continue here probably through the summer. However, down the road, there are indications that we're looking at reduced or at least smaller production compared to this year, next year in Australia and Argentina. So at this time next year, I think we won't have as much competition. But for the short term here, we're looking at very, very intense competition from some of the Southern Hemisphere supplies for the U.S. wheat.
Well, Brian, there's also a lot of intense competition in this country for acres in this upcoming growing season. Both corn and soybeans are battling it out, and so is spring wheat. North Dakota has been the target of severe weather over the past 2 weeks. Spring wheat prices have been moving. Brian, are we to a level that we can pull those acres back in?
Boy, you really hit the nail on the head, Mike. I think that the spring wheat market as we speak here is making new contract highs. A bit of a concern about some planting delays. I would say, however, that the blizzards that those producers experience, particularly in the western part of North Dakota, more of the glass half full type of approach. They really needed that moisture up there after a terrible drought here in 2021. So yes, planting has been delayed, but as you said, it's an acreage battle right now, and the spring wheat market is definitely, if you look at things like a ratio perhaps between Minneapolis futures and soybean futures, the Minneapolis futures have made a comeback here the last few weeks and is actually encouraging producers, albeit a bit delayed, but to go ahead and plant those spring wheat acres.
Well, and you talked about that ratio. Soybean prices have been moving as well. Brian, before we get to whole bean prices, I want to ask you about the bean oil market because that has been on fire this week. What's happened?
All-time highs as we speak here, Mike, in terms of soybean oil futures. There's been some tightness develop around the world amongst palm oil, some of the substitutable oils for soybean oil around the world, and it's been a perfect storm, if you will, in terms of all those factors coming into play, supporting the highest prices we've ever seen for soybean oil. And I'd remind your viewers that soybean oil is a very inelastic good. Higher prices typically do not discourage consumption immediately. You have to reach very high levels for those prices to discourage consumption.
Brian, are we getting close at this point here in the bean oil market? Are we worried about margins for those end users of the product quite yet?
There is a point, Mike, no question. I want to remind your viewers, it will top out. It's just unknown. Price is unpredictable, whether you're talking about soybean oil futures, corn futures, or livestock futures. At this point, I would say that the market is going to remain historically volatile because we're just entering the growing season here in the Northern Hemisphere. And you mentioned a moment ago, we're just planting the crops here in the U.S. So volatility is going to remain the norm. I'd encourage your viewers, in my opinion, to view volatility, though, as opportunity for their operations.
It certainly can be. As you think about demand for soybeans, you mentioned the very strong export demand we've seen for corn. Do you see that playing out on the soybean side as well?
It has played out, Mike, with a smaller crop in Brazil this year has really opened the door for U.S. soybean exports. Not only new crop, but also now we're getting a little bit of a window on these old crop soybean exports for these last few months of the crop year. China has come in here and bought a bit of soybeans here. So in our opinion, the USDA may bump up that old crop soybean export forecast for the U.S. in future reports.
Brian, meal price is going to come down anytime soon?
As an end user, I would be cautious and I would look at getting some coverage on for meal, for no other reason, Mike, that we've got the growing season ahead of us. There are different flexible strategies a user can use, but things in meal could get quite volatile if there's some weather scares here in the U.S. this summer.
And no doubt there will be. We've been talking to Brian Basting, economist with Advanced Trading. Thank you, Brian.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
This has been a delayed spring for a lot of producers throughout the Corn Belt, but I was doing some traveling this past week through Iowa and Illinois, and I did see some farmers getting out there on some field work, getting some tillage underway, and of course preparing to spread some dry fertilizer. Our tech correspondent Chad Colby has an update on the technology in that space.
So it's always great to catch up with my good friend Matt Foes, because if anybody's pushing the limits of technology and profit on the farm, it's Matt. And I jump in here in the cab with Matt, and I'm a little excited. You can hear it in my voice. Matt, let's talk a little bit about that guy. You've got a brand new spreader. Now, you started doing some spreading. We've talked about this on the show, actually, how many years ago?
It was 2019, so back in the prevent plant year, I got to spread a lot of cover crops come July. So I purchased a spreader, basically a starter model, if you want to call it, in order to get my feet wet and get that done. As time has gone on, I'm a little bit OCD. I like to do things myself. I wanted to spread all my fertilizer in a timely manner, so I graduated to one with a little bigger capacity, a little bigger spread pack.
I mean, you've got tractors sitting around doing nothing this time of year. To me, it's an easy transition for you. Let's talk about your decision on the machine you've got and some of the technology on it.
Yeah, so like you said, I have tractors sitting around. Asset utilization is something we all need to get better at. So getting a spreader that I could cover 400 or 500 acres a day, get done in a timely manner, was necessary. Also, because it holds 18 tons, I don't have to be chased with a tender every 5 minutes. I can go spread, for example, 180 acres to a fill right now, and then go back and pull from the semi.
You know, Matt, walking around it with you outside, one thing I noticed really quickly is some of the technology on board. The big thing, and I've run these machines in the past that I am just giddy about, is the scales on here. That allows you to really dial in this machine. And I could see right here via your data, you got a little over 21,000 pounds of product on board. You're putting 200 pounds an acre. Talk about some of the accuracies you've seen with this system.
Yeah, so the scales really give you that peace of mind that the rate is what you want it to be. I had one farm that the prescription for potash called for 4.26 tons. I physically used 4.3. So with some point rows, you're going to account for a little overspread, and I was pretty much dialed into where I want to be.
You know, calibration looks relatively easy, you know, and maintenance on these machines. I really like the belt in it. Looks to me like it's going to give you a lot of years of utilization here on the Foes farm.
Thank you, Chad. And folks, if you want more equipment technology, stay with us. Later in the program, we'll have the third part of that conversation with Scott Harris from Case IH. Carbon markets, carbon credits, carbon programs, carbon sequestration, all of this stuff has been in the headlines a lot here over the past 2 or 3 years, and it doesn't seem to be going away. Last week, ExxonMobil, the oil company, released their assessment of the future of the carbon markets, and they believe by 2050, carbon sequestration is going to be a $4 trillion market. That's trillion with a T. These programs are here, and several groups in agriculture are rolling out similar programs designed to capture this enthusiasm. A few weeks back, I had the chance to talk with Lisa Streck. She's with the Bayer Carbon Program, and I asked her just how that program has gone since they've started it.
We're in the second year of our program, so within our program we'll pay farmers to implement climate smart practices on their farms, such as no-till, strip-till, or cover crop.
And how do growers sign up for the program in the first place? Where can they get information?
Growers can get information at our website at bayercarbon.com. They can learn about the program there, and they can even enroll from that website.
What prompted Bayer to put a carbon program together? Why did you feel like you were the right fit to run this sort of program?
So given Bayer, with our footprint that we have today, our connection to growers and agriculture, our digital capabilities, we saw a lot of trends occurring within the industry from a macro level where consumers would pay higher prices for sustainability produced products. So we see an opportunity in agriculture where we can really have an impact. We know that soil can sequester carbon, which helps the planet overall, and we wanted to reward farmers for the role that they play in sustainability, and that's why we've launched the Bayer Carbon Program.
So how has enrollment gone over the last 2 years?
Yeah, enrollment's been great. We've had a lot of farmers that have signed up for our program, and then a lot of farmers who are still investigating our program. We've seen a lot of interest. Farmers are becoming more educated in this space and asking great questions and enrolling. Within our program, farmers can enroll as little as 10 acres in the program, or obviously they could enroll their entire farm. So we definitely encourage farmers to enroll, a percentage of their farm and see if the program's right for them.
When farmers are looking at enrolling either their entire farm or a portion of their acres, Lisa, how long does an enrollment period typically last in the program?
Yeah, so within the program, farmers will sign a contract. It's a 10-year commitment with a contract. However, we know flexibility is important to farmers, so if at any time they decide the program's not right for them, they can leave the program without any penalty.
Where do you see this going longer term? Lisa, look down the road 5 or 10 years. Where do you see the carbon sequestration program being?
I think the carbon sequestration program will fit under an overall umbrella of sustainability, that it'll just be one opportunity that's available to farmers. I think there will continue to be opportunities for farmers to make additional revenue from sustainability practices, whether that's a premium on sustainability produced grain. But I think farmers will continue to have opportunities to have access to additional revenue streams based on the practices that they implement on their farm.
You know, one of the things I hear from growers, a concern about carbon programs, is they worry that maybe signing up too early might preempt them from being available for more opportunities down the line. With the Bayer Carbon program, would growers have additional opportunity to change their enrollment or add different programs in the future?
They would. So within our program, they can add additional fields in the program. We've also committed in our contract, if we see the price of carbon increase in the future, that we'll reevaluate our offer. So I would actually encourage farmers to enroll now where programs are more flexible than they potentially may be in the future.
Lisa, carbon sequestration, it's all the buzz. Is it just a fad?
I don't think it's just a fad, and really we've done a lot of market research in this space. We understand that consumers are willing to pay more for sustainably produced products. So I think it's an opportunity for that value to go all the way back to the farmer that starts the food chain. So I don't think it's a fad.
It's here to stay. For growers who want to get more information about it, could you tell us the website one more time?
Yeah, farmers can go to our website at bayercarbon.com to learn more.
Well, that was Lisa Streck from the Bayer Carbon Grower Program. And now we want to talk weather. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins me here. And Greg, our friends in the Central Plains have been grappling with drought and high winds for some time, causing wildfires. Any relief for those folks?
Yeah, that what's left of vegetation just as brittle as can be. You put 95-degree heat, 50-plus mile-an-hour winds, and frequently do that, it's going to go up in smoke. But there may be some local limited relief with a couple of showers and thunderstorms. Watch lightning as well this week there. The bigger story, I think, is playing out in areas to the north as you get up through the northern plains and uppermost Midwest.
Indeed, Greg, that is quite a change in North Dakota. That flooding has developed. How widespread do you anticipate it to be there in the Red River Valley?
Well, we'll have details on how really tough it may get with the frequency of wet weather later in the program. But 2 or 3 winter storms, and then 1 to 3 inches of rain the past week, and another 1 to 2 expected this week, and just a parade of features here in the coming weeks. So, yeah, from a drought to a flood, Grand Forks to Oslo, Minnesota, and northward for now, but we'll see if there's sort of a trickle-down effect as it meets up with the Missouri River and points on southward here in the coming days and weeks.
Are the wind speeds going to come down, Greg?
They won't. These are dynamic weather systems, so at least we don't have any blizzards per se for the Canadian prairie, the plain states as well. But yeah, there'll be some stout winds out there, and the specter of severe weather, which has been limited, comes back into play for parts of the plain states too. So we'll run the whole gamut, but at least there will be, on the positive side, drought relief for the northern plains in the coming weeks.
All right, things to keep an eye on. And Greg, I imagine you've got an update for us later on in the show.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, stick around. We'll have more coming from Greg Solier when we return. In addition, a lot more to come on This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Farming practices over the past 70 years have changed quite a bit, but so has farm machinery. For the past couple of weeks, Max has been bringing us conversations with Scott Harris, the global president of Case IH, and this week he brings us part 3.
Yes, Mike, we've enjoyed the past couple of weeks sharing the comments from Scott Harris as he's talked about all of that technology coming along and the machines his company has to sell. He's also talked about the agriculture economy. He also shared some remarks with us about the people who build the equipment at Case IH and the farmers who buy it, and the fact that sometimes they're one and the same.
The speed at which technology and innovation is impacting our industry and our ability to continue to improve and support farmer results is inspiring, it's motivating. We're seeing younger people come into our industry because they're interested in the technology and working for the greater purpose, right? It's not just about building equipment. We're supporting farmers in the farming industry. There's a sustainability factor that's involved in what we're doing today and the technology that we're developing. Farmers are very interested in sustainability. They've been the stewards of our land since farming began. So it's just a really exciting time to be in this industry.
A Missouri grower came up to me at one of the wintertime farm shows and he said, "Mr. Armstrong, I'm a first-generation farmer." First generation. You don't hear that too often, do you? It's a reminder that people are being drawn into the industry who might not have looked at it a few years ago.
No, absolutely right. And conversely, we've got farmers that have been seventh generation, right, that are running the tractors of yesteryear.
You have to be ready to help that generation transition, don't you? I mean, it's out there, it's looming out there, and you need to be a part of all of that, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we support, FFA and a number of other organizations in ensuring that young people have access and opportunity to the industry and to be a part of it and to be a part of our team. We've also got a technician program. One of the biggest challenges that our network has today is getting really qualified mechanics to work on these increasingly sophisticated machines. It's so we've got programs designed to engage youth very early in their education to help them get on a path to some very lucrative and rewarding careers.
One thing I see from monitoring social media, so many young people in agriculture are very, very proud of being a part of this industry, just as their parents and grandparents have been, but they openly display it. That pride is out there. And that probably engenders even more interest, doesn't it, Scott, of people in the future coming into the business and going to work, for example, for you folks?
That's for sure. We've learned that the younger generations of today want to work not just for a company, they want to work for somebody that has a greater purpose. And we certainly believe that we do. I mean, we believe that. Our one of our campaigns, one of our slogans today is built by farmers, and it's absolutely true. That's why we exist. We believe the men and women that work in agriculture, it's the noblest of all professions. They're stewards of the land and stalwarts in their community, and they have great family values, and they persevere through the challenges and dynamic working environment and weather conditions and economics, et cetera. It's just a very inspiring group to be with.
Scott Harris, who's been with Case IH for about 15 years, overseeing the brand in North America and now around the world for the past 5 years, said he learned early on, Mike, when he went into the plants that the company has, that many of those folks were in fact farmers building the machines, or they had come from farming families.
Thank you, Max. It's always nice to see a company with such a commitment to rural America. Appreciate that update from Scott Harris, the global president of Case IH.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
It's time to check the weather. Our meteorologist Greg Solier is here. And Greg, what do you see happening in the Pacific Northwest?
Well, the parade of weather systems continues on, and we've seen these features make their way east of the Divide, energize, tap into some of this very late season cold air through the Canadian prairie, and voila, it's been moisture in one form or another across parts of Montana, the Dakotas, the Canadian prairie as well. Some of it winter storm style, snow melt, and on top of that rain, there is a corridor with time here. We're going to see literally from a drought to a flood. Here's the next weather system ashore. Northern California, Pacific Northwest takes the same route through Yellowstone. It'll deepen around the Black Hills on one boundary to the north, cold front and a deepening upper trough right behind it, and an expanse of rain, probably some snow at the Canadian border, and some additional beneficial moisture for Northern California into the Pacific Northwest. So at least some modest drought improvement there over the past few weeks. The southern reflection of that system in the Pacific Northwest may generate a late season shower north of the Bay Area, warm through the valley locales. Look at this weather system kind of winding its way across areas of the central high plains. One day it's 95 degrees, fires everywhere, and still fire and cleanup and assessment going on from Nebraska and southward. At least there's moisture, but at the same time, the potential for showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe, into parts of Kansas and Oklahoma as the week wears on. And another piece of energy, late season style, coming across California. So, Mike, maybe some opportunity for additional, albeit light moisture and limited drought relief in the southwest.
Well, I know across the Corn Belt, farmers are itching to get into the fields. Greg, how's that look this next week?
We've made some progress, maybe 10-12% of corn into parts of Nebraska, Iowa, maybe Missouri. There has been little, if any, significant gain in the eastern Corn Belt. Here's one weather system on the maps and charts. Another round of this late season cold. We had frost all the way down past the Ohio last week, and on the heels of that low, here comes another one screaming out of the Black Hills. It'll wind up with a double barrel frontal system, deepening trough, an expanse of rain, some snow at the Canadian border. Watch the flooding now into parts of the western Corn Belt, and with time, again, a march to the east of the shower and thunderstorm activity. Very limited access to field work and planting in the eastern Corn Belt. Get used to it, character building, as we head deeper into this spring season. Note the severe weather back into play here, and at least some moisture settling the dust and those 95-degree temperatures on 60-mile-an-hour winds of late in the central and southwest high plains. This weather system deepens with time over the Oklahoma Panhandle. Clusters of showers and thunderstorms back west of the Delta. Very wet in this particular corridor. Gusty winds in through West Texas. So a busy weather pattern for the southern plains. Limited drought relief there.
What do you see as you look to the east coast, Greg?
Looks like the showers and the thunderstorms with this particular weather system down across from about the border trade on southward. Relatively weak, fast-moving late season snowflakes for the Great Lakes region, St. Lawrence River Valley. We get that weather system to move through the Canadian prairie. Some dry time, but cold frost and freeze in the northeast of New England. And look at the moisture back across much of the Corn Belt locales. Limited field work expected there, middle to late portions of the week. Some opportunity in the southeast, some drought relief of late here. Very wet in the Delta and the lower Mississippi Valley. That trend continues on with initial showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe mid to late week. Some opportunities for field work farther east into the Carolinas and southeast.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
We're talking weather with Greg Solier. And Greg, who are the haves and the have-nots on precip next week?
Nice to have some additional moisture, but it's coming at a price. You know, we've had winter storms of late across the northern plains, southern Canadian prairie, rapid snow melt. And on top of that, last week, 1 to 3 inches in this corridor, another 1 or 2 expected into the Red River Valley of the north. Yeah, the specter of standing water and flooding into play down through the Missouri Basin as well. Look at this corridor, 1 to 2, some spots 3 inches of rain. Forget about it with field work this week in many locales of the Corn Belt, heavy and severe down to the Ozarks, down through the southeastern part of the country as well. Some moisture into the drought areas of the high plains, and still some late season snow across the northern and central Rockies, even a couple of showers, northern California.
What's your crystal ball show for the week of May 9th?
So got these blobs of cool to cold air. They back and forth. They split apart. They retrograde. Here's a piece here. Another one through the western states. A broad southwest to northeast upper level wind flow. And the warmth, if you will, doing it into the soils over the Ohio Valley, southeastern part of the country. But this setup means a busy and active weather pattern. Good news for the Pacific Northwest and northern Rockies. Not so good in this particular corridor. Drought relief continues on southern Great Lakes region. Heavy and severe on the storms over the southeastern, at least the southern plains, while the southeastern part of the country, mid-Atlantic region, is high and dry.
Well, how about mid-May? Greg, do we get a warm-up?
I don't think so. You know, these big, warm, extended windows of opportunity, as we have coined it, just don't see many of them here this planting season as they apply to the northern and eastern Corn Belt. Here's another surge of cold air, maybe some frost potential all the way down to the Ohio. Would you believe mid-May, normal temperatures here, the warmth across the southwestern part of the country. Pretty busy weather pattern Western, focus Pacific Northwest, again the Canadian Prairie, the Dakotas, and across much of the upper Midwest and over the northern half of the Corn Belt.
Greg, take us through that last full week of May. What do you anticipate?
No big, hot, warm ridge of high pressure and control, flat, and this is the way it's going to go here for weeks to come, even after this late May calendar date from the southwest into the southern plains and southeastern sections of the country. This is a fast jet stream for the time of year, and note the compression of temperatures from the cold here to the warmth here, and it means there's moisture, plenty of it, too much of a good thing, probably with time, across the Dakotas, through much of the Corn Belt. Additional late planting across many areas. Wet weather over the southeastern part of the country as well. Normal precip for Florida. Good news there. We're back to high and dry weather for Oklahoma, Texas, and across much of Southern California and the desert Southwest.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
In Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, it's another one of those "why in the world is that thing on there" stories. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets, made in America quality, guaranteed for 55 years. In a variety of colors with great utility. Check them out on the website, storelock.com. Well, last weekend we shared with you the story of Dan Wesch's Super M at Cayuga, Indiana. And that tractor had an extra feature on it. There were some rods that had been welded on each of the back wheels to protect the valve stem so the pigs wouldn't chew on them. Well, here's another added feature. This is on a tractor at Kenly, North Carolina. We saw this a few days ago that Kenneth Price owns this Ford 2000, almost 50 years old, and he has a plastic bottle hanging on there. Looks like it might have been a juice bottle, a sports drink bottle long ago, but we suspect it could have been placed up here on the muffler. For the times when the Ford sits out in the rain, not everybody back in the day could afford those muffler caps, and they might have used a bottle or a can on the muffler to keep the rain out. I think Kenneth might have that tractor at the show coming up in Goldsboro, North Carolina later this week. But the big spring show in that region is the Got to Be NC Festival. That will involve many antique farm tractors, the biggest spring tractor show in the Southeast. That'll be the weekend of May 20th through the 22nd. At the North Carolina State Fairgrounds in Raleigh. Now let's check on what's selling for Big Iron Auctions. Here's Mark Stock with his weekly report.
Well, Max, in the nearly 40 years I've been in this business, I haven't seen this much volume of equipment selling and new record prices being met every week. And our May 4th sale features over 1,980 items. Now, Dr. Richard Friedling is retiring from Lyons, Kansas, and he's selling his John Deere 9300 four-wheel drive tractor that's got 4,260 hours. He's got a Great Plains 65 48-foot field cultivator. Then we've got a 2021 John Deere R4044 self-propelled sprayer with 463 hours selling out of Lake City, Arkansas. Also, Agco Finance is selling a 2018 Terragator TG 400B dry Air Max floater with only 1,500 hours. That's located in Forest City, Arkansas. In Cambridge, Iowa, check out the 9250T track tractor. There are two 2019 Wilkins live floor enclosed trailers selling in Columbus, Nebraska. Then we've got a special auction on Thursday, May the 5th, folks. Carl and Michelle Leatherwood, their revocable trust out of Cimarron, Kansas, will sell their high-quality items, including a 2006 Gleaner R75 combine. They've got a 2013 Apache AS720 sprayer with 2,204 hours. They've got a 2013 New Holland T8 330 tractor. They also have a 2012 New Holland H8040 swather selling on Thursday, May the 5th. If you need equipment, go to BigIron.com. Everything sells with no reserves to the highest bidder.
This Week in Agribusiness is always proud to get to know FFAers around the country, and this week we're meeting Emily Matejka. She is the immediate past president of the Minnesota FFA, and Emily, I understand convention just wrapped up for you. How was it?
Yes, it was a whirlwind to say the least. Over Sunday to Tuesday, April 24th to 26th, I was in the Twin Cities with my state officer team, and we were going about convention, really leading those sessions, and it was a lot of fun, I'd have to say. I mean, there were days where the stress of the day kind of wore on to you, but it was definitely great to be back in person after 3 years and to really see all those FFA members back in person, being really excited about being at convention, just really seeing that atmosphere come back to life at the 3 a.m. arena at Mariucci.
That is so neat to get everybody back together. Emily, as you reflect on your year as president of the Minnesota FFA, what were some of the highlights for you?
For sure. So I'd have to say just being with all of the students. I mean, I traveled to every region of the state, all the way up to almost all the way up to Fargo in North Dakota, up there in the north, even all the way down to the southeastern part of the state to Region 8. So it was great to see all of the students, and I love just the diversity that Minnesota has. I mean, you have the forestry up in the north, you have a lot of that crops down in the south, and just the students really reflect that as well, and it was great to see all of the students. And then that excitement that I mentioned was at convention was also just among the students throughout the year as well. So really enjoyed doing those chapter visits, interacting with the students, and getting to know all of them.
Emily, what do your future plans hold? Are you going to stay in agriculture?
Absolutely. So I'm currently a sophomore here at South Dakota State University, and I'm majoring in agricultural communications with a minor in agronomy. And so after I finish my year here at college, I will be doing an internship with Pioneer Corteva as the seed sales intern in hopes of continuing my leadership within agriculture.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, folks. That's Emily Matejka, past president of the Minnesota FFA.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
Surprise! I have a request for you that I'd normally be offering a couple of months from now when we get into the full county and state fairs season, but because of the pandemic and the postponements and the cancellations of the past couple of years, I'm concerned about the future of county and state fairs in many communities. So I'm asking that you put on your schedule the opportunity to support your local county fairs, because you support agriculture, you support 4-H and FFA members. It gives them an opportunity to show off their work with livestock and other exhibits during the summer season. And it supports a lot of farm families who also provide food service at many of those county and state fairs. So please put a county or state fair on your list for the summertime, and then be sure to attend, because they need the income, they need the activity, and they need you and me to be there. That's my request for this summer, that you support your county and state fairs. You be safe, be well. Those are my thoughts on Samuelson Says.
Whether it's a drought and fire risk, or rainfall, or just excessive cold, it seems like every producer has faced struggles this spring, perhaps none more so than North Dakota. Max has an update from the North Dakota Commissioner of Agriculture.
Mike, we've been seeing in the social media, of course, those images coming in from North Dakota about how tough it has been for farmers and ranchers there in recent days. Joining us here is the Commissioner of Agriculture for the state of North Dakota, Doug Goring. We appreciate you spending a moment here. We know you've been running 100 miles an hour. How bad has it been for your producers? They've been just slammed one after another with weather events.
Yeah, there was an 8-day period there where they got hit with 2 major storms, and in some places accumulated well over 40 inches of heavy, wet snow. Now, to that point, I will tell you that one rancher told me sometimes you need a calf-killing storm to actually save the herd. That's looking at the silver lining on the cloud.
I've always said, I don't know if anybody's tougher than that northern plains farmer or rancher. You're used to adversity, but this is just really the 1-2 punch, it seems. I heard the other day, within about a 100-mile stretch, there was both a blizzard warning and a tornado watch, with the kind of dynamics of the weather taking place in your state. What are you telling the growers here to give them some hope?
Well, those that are experiencing some losses or trying to assess what's going on in their backyard, don't be so quick to call FSA and start bleeding all over and just telling them everything. Just take a deep breath, start analyzing and assessing what's happened on your place, what's taking place, sit down. Our office will help you if you need some help in trying to determine, well, do you think this is eligible? Do you think that's eligible? How should I proceed with this? I mean, you can visit with the FSA office too, but they're getting overwhelmed with calls and concerns, and we'll work together to try and help the producers, but document. And again, going back to the silver lining, a lot of producers are really happy that we filled up livestock ponds and we're going to grow some grass this spring. It's been almost 2 years of drought. So they're happy about that, but you have to live through the moment. And currently it's a lot of hard work, a lot of hard effort, and people are putting in some cases, 21 hours a day right now, just trying to manage that, let alone cab out livestock.
Well, the temperatures will warm and the grass and the pastures will green, and we'll be thinking about you folks by all means, Doug. Thanks for sharing the story with us. We appreciate it this weekend.
Thanks, Max. Take care.
You too. Doug Goring, Commissioner of Agriculture, Mike, in the state of North Dakota.
Thank you, Max. We'll certainly keep all those producers in our thoughts and wish them a speedy recovery from these weather disasters. And folks, we certainly wish all of you will tune in next week, same time, same place, right here for This Week in Agribusiness.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communication in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.